All right. So for my application assignment, I found a very interesting article in the LA Times that was released on the 11th uh, of this month. Uh, and that article is focusing on this in-depth analysis of the effect of the nation's highway and freeway systems having a disproportional um, effect of dislocation on vulnerable uh, populations, specifically minority populations, even more specifically uh, African American and Latino populations within the United States, through the widening and expansion of freeways and the bulldozing and relocation of families in order to make room for those. Uh, this is no new trend. Um, going back to the 1950s to the 1990s, over a million individuals were relocated from their homes for highway expansion. No big number, million. The last 30 years, since the 90s, it's been 200,000 individuals. But these stats are most likely diluted due to not a huge amount of concrete statistical gathering for this trend. It just seems to be something that these transportation departments are not taking into account. Um, And due to the lack of statistical information available, the LA Times decided to take matters into their own hands a little bit and do an independent study where they looked at the five states that had the most displaced individuals due to highway expansion, and those since 1991, and that would be California, North Carolina, Texas, Florida, and Mississippi. They looked at 22 different projects in which, 22 projects that were demolished for highway expansion. That included 6,300 households and 16,000 people. And they discovered that two-thirds of these projects had a majority African American and Latino population living within them. Um, all these individuals that they interviewed as well were stating that they felt like they had lost everything. Um, the house where they raised their children. It was just devastating for them. But it seems to be kind of, you know, not even a little bit of a nanosecond blip in the mind of these transportation departments as they continue to make more urban planning for the widening of freeways, um, including there's an upcoming planning for the expansion of Interstate 10 here in California, in the LA area, and in various other areas of the nation. And they also found that it may all be for naught. Evidence is suggesting that the widening of freeways may not actually help traffic congestion at all. It may temporarily alleviate it, but then propagate even more congestion and traffic issues by encouraging more drivers to hit the road due to more lanes on the freeway. Um, there is a little bit of a pushback. California is starting to reevaluate some of their proposed widenings of highways, and because they've had 10,000 families displaced in the last 30 years, um, some of these plans are being halted. The Biden administration is very set on their stance that this should be reevaluated, and even perhaps some highways should be torn down due to lack of use, so that more housing can be built. But then again, bipartisan bill was just passed for infrastructure, and $350 billion of that is going towards roads. So it seems to be kind of this vicious cycle. Um, and it really reminded me of Wilson's reading regarding how there are multiple factors that lead to the conglomeration of a certain people group into an area, especially in these urban areas where these widenings are hitting them the hardest, um, and how these trends are going back centuries um, to pre-Civil War. Um, in order to kind of set these populations up for failure, where they're having to be disproportionately affected by these relocations. And it's it's a grim situation in which they have no other option but to skedaddle. They're financially compensated, which is more than a lot of people can say in the past. In the past, a lot of families, decades and decades ago, were not getting anything for having to relocate. But then again, how do you replace memories? Um, but yeah, Wilson's reading and how these populations are clumped together and then can be kind of beat down specifically is definitely grim outlook. It was an interesting read, a little bit of a sad one as well. Thanks.